Froggy!
You've seen the title of the video. You're thinking this is going to be a massive shitpost about a character simultaneously hated, mocked, and somewhat liked by a number of Sonic the Hedgehog fans. I've heard it all before. He's boring, he's stupid, he's not cool, he's an unnecessary addition to the series, his gameplay sucks. And my response every time, without fail, is, you're wrong. You are factually incorrect. If he were stupid, he'd be wearing socks with his sandals. No, Big the Cat is one of the greatest characters to ever grace the Sonic games. Dare I say, the greatest. Today, you're going to learn to appreciate and love him in the same way that I do. Now sit your ass down, grab a pen, and start taking notes. It's time for a history lesson. Big first appeared back in Sonic Adventure for the Dreamcast as one of the game's 6 playable characters. His story centres around his journey to find his best friend and pet, Froggy, who continuously runs away after accidentally eating a bit of the game's villain Chaos, as well as what Big believes to be his lucky charm, a Chaos Emerald. After a little bit of fishing, Froggy and the Emerald are absorbed by Chaos, leading Big to carry out a daring rescue with some help from Sonic. Finally, the two lifelong friends are reunited, and return home where they do a little jig and some more fishing. Big would then go on to appear in many games after Sonic Adventure, likely because of how wholesome, heartwarming, and beautiful his and Froggy's story was. Fans must have absolutely loved it at the time. I mean, how could they not? Ah. Right, anyone who wrote those posts back in 1999, if you're watching this right now, fuck you, you were really mean. You think that Big is useless? Alright, well let's look at 2 different occasions in the game where you can meet him for the first time. The first is in Sonic's story, just before his fight with Chaos 6, where he just appears out of thin fucking air and yells that he needs to save Froggy. Sonic's just like, sure, I'll help, but then seems to do all the work by himself as Big just leaves. Okay, not the best first impression, but let's see if that other occasion that I mentioned gives him a better introduction.
Whoa! Wait for me!
If this was all I'd ever seen of Big, then yeah, I think you'd have a point in calling him useless. But let's not forget, Sonic Adventure's story is built around the different perspectives of the 6 playable characters, how they react to and learn from the events that unfold. If we want to understand Big, to truly learn why he's so magnificent, we need to see things from his perspective. We need to delve into his psyche. So let's do that. Just for a minute, I'd like you to put yourselves in Big's sandals and picture this. You are fast asleep, utterly peaceful, with a fishing rod in one hand and your best friend at your side. Suddenly you wake up, and you see that your friend is up and about, but they're acting strange. You can immediately tell that something isn't right, but before you can ask further, they run off into the night. What are you supposed to do? Call the police? Officer, my best friend has ran away from home. He's gone missing. Alright, stay calm. I promise you that we'll find them and bring them back home. Can you give us a description of your friend? Yes I can. He's a frog, and he's grown a tail. Hello? Hello? Fuck! Big doesn't do this, though. Big knows that wasting police time is a serious offence under the Criminal Law Act of 1967, and that he could face a maximum sentence of 6 months imprisonment and a hefty fine. Instead, he does what any friend would do, and goes out in search of Froggy himself. A very brave and selfless act that tells us what kind of a person Big is. Somebody who puts his friends first, prioritising their safety and well-being before his own. In fact, I'd argue that this is to his own detriment, because as we see in the very next cutscene, he's outside of Station Square's railway station during the middle of the day. Taking into account that after this we have to search around the hub area for Froggy, we can reasonably assume that Big has just arrived here by train due to Tails stating that the fastest way to Station Square from the Mystic Ruins is by train. Therefore it's the quickest way to the Mystic Ruins from the city, you know, vice versa. The railway is also the only reasonable mode of transportation between the two locations, besides Tails' plane, which Big wouldn't know about, or walking, I guess? But the Mystic Ruins appear to be coastal. They don't have any roads, trails, or anything, really, that could lead directly to Station Square. Saying that, though, Big deciding to walk all the way there would explain the time differences between the two cutscenes and show how determined he is in his quest, refusing to sleep or stop until he found Froggy. Unless the distance between Station Square and the Mystic Ruins is so far that it takes the train, the fastest method of transportation, remember, an entire night and part of the morning to reach them, which would also allow Big to potentially continue his sleep. I had to be 100% confident in this possibility either way, so I went in search of evidence, and I very quickly found it. If you travel by rail at night after beating each character's story in the game, you'll end up at your destination during the daytime, and vice versa. So based on the evidence, Big most likely got the train and could have slept through the journey. But why would he do that if he was in desperate search of his best friend? I refuse to believe that a cat who took matters into his own hands would even think of going back to sleep. He would have been looking through every carriage, out of every one of the windows, possibly even the driver's cab, leaving no stone unturned if it could help find Froggy. This then begs the question, how long was Big's train journey? Well, taking the train will change the time of day between daylight, sunset, and nighttime, which then repeats in that same order. 3 different times, 24 hours in a day, 24 divided by 3 gives us 8. Big went on an 8-hour train journey, right after being woken up in the dead of night, stayed awake the whole way through to look for Froggy, and even when all hope seemed lost, didn't give up, and continued his quest. That right there is the single most powerful trait, not just of Big's story, but of him as a character. Resilience. Every single time Big manages to find Froggy, he runs away from him again, without fail. This is soul-crushing for Big. Listen to the pain in his voice.
Oh, now what am I gonna do?
He's questioning himself, unsure if he can actually get his best friend back. But his doubt is temporary. He still continues to go after Froggy, refusing to give up. His resilience remains strong, even when his friend appears to be held captive by a complete monster. This two-tailed fox just stands there, menacingly, not moving an inch, refusing to let go of this poor, innocent little critter who was just minding its own business and wanted something to eat. However, Big doesn't turn back, or surrender, or beg. He doesn't even speak to this frognapper. In his mind, there is no negotiating. He's going to use force if necessary. So he runs, the fastest he has ever ran in his entire life because of how perilous the situation is, the impact of each step causing the ground beneath his sandals to shake. And then he trips, and falls. Once more the impact shakes the ground, even sending Froggy and his detainer back slightly. Despite being in a bit of pain as a result, Big doesn't allow this to affect him. He's just so happy to have finally gotten Froggy back. That resilience has paid off, they can go home. And then this fucking villain does something unforgivable, something that he will no doubt pay for when he is dragged down to the darkest depths of hell itself upon his death. He lets Froggy go. You can call it an accident, you can say, oh well, Big was intimidating him by running up that quickly, it's no wonder he let Froggy go, he was very surprised. Do you really believe that? He did this intentionally, with malice. He knew what he was doing, and I can prove it with a simple question. Why was there a 12.5 second gap between when Big landed in front of him and Froggy getting away? Surely, if this piece of shit was so surprised, his fingers would have slipped immediately, there wouldn't have been a gap. The frog would have hopped out of there straight away. It gets worse though. Big says something right before Froggy runs away.
Glad I found you.
1 second after expressing that relief, this little cunt shatters it into a million pieces and fucking taunts him.
Oops. Sorry, if I had only held on tighter.
Oh, whoops, I was just feeling like being a little bit of a silly Billy. Fuck you! Once again, Big's heart is broken, his soul feeling as if it was stolen from him by this heartless prick. And yet, he dusts himself down, he gets back up, and he continues his search. His resilience, even after that two-tailed freak tried to break it as well as his spirits, is even stronger. He boards the train for another long and arduous 8-hour journey, and upon arriving in Station Square sees Froggy heading for the Emerald Coast. This is it. It's now or never. It's time to get him back once and for all. And then he finally succeeds! His resilience has been rewarded, being woken up in the middle of the night, the multiple 8-hour train journeys, the torment that this fucker inflicted on him. It's all been worth it, just to have Froggy back. His joy is unparalleled. I genuinely don't think I've ever seen a character in the entire history of fiction this happy before.
Froggy!
He carries Froggy in his arms, knowing that his friend must be incredibly tired from all the swimming and hopping around, demonstrating his love and care. They're ready to head back home at last, only to be separated once again. This cold, unfeeling machine just rushes past and snatches Froggy away. Big really has to take a moment to process the reality of the situation. He can't believe it. He truly thought that this was all over, that he had his best friend back, but no. For reasons he can't comprehend, the deck is continuously stacked against him. He can't win. And what's more, he has no idea what this robot wants with Froggy. Before this, he would have ran up and attacked like he tried to do with that twisted fox without hesitation. But not this time. His resilience has never been challenged as much as it has now. And so Big breaks down, begging and pleading while chasing after the robot. Listen to the desperation, the despair and fear in his voice.
No, hold on there. Come back, please. Give me my friend back. I'm begging you, please.
It can't get any worse for him than this, can it? Well, the robot takes Froggy to a massive airship, which is hiding inside the jungle, and subsequently ascends into the sky. Even if Big were to have followed the robot all the way there, he would have to sneak aboard completely undetected by the ship's defences, which, based on the cutscenes in the other stories, is very heavily fortified. And yet, against all possible odds, Big managed to get aboard with absolutely no indication that he was found. How? How in the hell did he manage this? What is he hiding? Okay, pin in that for a little bit, just until we finish psychoanalyzing him. I promise you, we are coming back to that. After searching around the aircraft for a while, he manages to find Froggy in the hot shelter, but their joyous reunion is once again interrupted, this time for a flashback to the past. You might expect me to have some sort of insight or analysis into why this happens, but I've got nothing. This is just there. It's not important and doesn't tell us anything about Big. What immediately follows it, however, does. The egg carrier begins to shake. The two friends hear an explosion coming from above. Big knows full well that it can only mean more trouble. If they can't get out, then all of Big's efforts to get to this point will have been for nothing. He knows this. He says as much to Froggy. And what he says next is one of the most depressingly beautiful sentences that has ever been uttered in the history of not only video games, but mankind as a whole.
I don't know who would bother to save us both.
There is so much to unpack here. Big seems to believe, deep down, that no one would come to his and Froggy's aid if they were in danger. Why? Does he think they're not worth saving? Of course not. He would never think that about his best friend. So, when he says, save us both, perhaps he is prioritising Froggy being rescued before himself, tying back to the idea that he puts others first, even if it means risking his own safety and maybe his life. Alternatively, he may very well be reassuring himself, regaining his confidence and resilience after struggling with them for so long, knowing that all he and Froggy have is each other. They can't depend on the possibility of there being other people aboard who might be able to rescue them from this crisis. They have to escape themselves. Or maybe, and this possibility is quite meta, so I fundamentally don't believe it to be the case, but it's worth bringing up regardless, this single line of dialogue is a predicted critique from the writers of Sonic Adventure towards us, the players. Consider this. In all of the other campaigns in this game, we do some kind of platforming. High-speed traditional 3D Sonic levels, flying and racing against an opponent, treasure hunting in a large open space, escaping a robot chasing you down, and killing your own kind to increase your high score. Big doesn't do platforming though. He goes fishing. A completely different type of gameplay that doesn't fit with the rest of the game at all, and just seems random. And yet, you're forced to play it in order to unlock the last story and final boss. And as we saw in that Usenet group earlier, nobody seemed to like that fact. And the writers knew. They wrote this sentence so that Big could say directly to every single person that didn't like his gameplay or despised him because of it, yeah, I know you hate me. If you could, you'd just put the controller down and watch me and my best friend die in a creepy, bad-ending cutscene. You don't want to save me from this, all because you hate that you had to pick up a fishing rod and get my friend back. But you have to save me from this. You don't have a choice. You want to play through that awesome final story? Then get us out of here. That is, of course, a very unlikely possibility, but I'm an open-minded man, and I've always believed that powerful lines of dialogue, like Big's, are open to any number of interpretations and theories. Either way, he takes matters into his own hands one more time, and makes it to the top of the egg carrier, where he comes face to face with the cause of all the misery he has had to endure. This creature is the reason that Froggy was acting strangely. It's the one that inadvertently led to Big facing a total psychopath, the motivating factor of the robot that captured Froggy at Emerald Coast. It's all because of this. The two friends are frozen in shock, fear. They've never seen anything like this before. And before Big knows it, both Froggy and the Chaos Emerald are within chaos. He's naturally distressed, flailing his arms about, his resilience seemingly broken for good. He doesn't stand a chance against something like this. He's operating on little to no sleep, and all he has is a fishing rod. And so, he seems to just phase out. But then Sonic shows up. This beacon of hope, a reminder that heroes never give up, and Big comes to his senses. Realising what has happened, he makes a reassuring promise to his friend.
I'll save you! Don't worry, Pally!
And despite Sonic boldly proclaiming that he'll get Froggy back, Big keeps this promise and steps in to help. He doesn't run off like a coward as he appeared to in Sonic's story, no. He knows that even the fastest thing alive can't do this alone. So he puts his own life on the line, ready to sacrifice himself to save Froggy from this watery prison. And with just a lure and a fishing rod, he triumphs. With encouragement from Sonic, the two make their escape from the egg carrier, coming across a plane. Big laments that he doesn't have a clue how to pilot such a machine, but he doesn't let that stop him. He decides to persevere and have a go regardless, allowing him to overcome this final hurdle. And at last, genuinely this time, they return home and celebrate their reunion. His love for his friend, his refusal to give up, his bravery when faced with dangerous enemies, all of these things have made this beautiful moment possible. Wait, what about the plane they were in, the Tornado 2? In a cutscene in the final story, it's seen in a small pond close to Big's house where his adventure first began. It looks to be heavily damaged, no doubt a result of him not knowing how to activate the landing gear on... Oh, that's right, there was no landing gear. Okay, hang on. Big the Cat, someone with no experience flying any kind of aircraft whatsoever prior to this point, no concept of how they could possibly function, managed to fly this plane all the way to the Mystic Ruins and land it right next to his house in an incredibly small body of water without harming himself or Froggy in any way. Seriously, look at him in both his final cutscene and the last story. There isn't a scratch on him. This is him getting aboard the egg carrier undetected all over again. How the fuck did he manage to do things which are, let's be honest here, impossible for somebody completely ordinary like him? He doesn't have the super speed that Sonic does to easily get past all the weapons and traps that lie within the egg carrier. He's no super genius, ace aviator, any kind of mechanic, or a fucking monster for that matter like this thing is. Additionally, his tracking skills when searching for Froggy are nothing compared to Knuckles' ability to locate the Master Emerald shards. Amy's hammer easily outclasses his simple fishing rod, and there is no way that he would ever consider taking up arms like Gamma does. Maybe it's just dumb luck that allows him to pull off these Herculean feats. It has to be, right? Unless... Now hang on, let's not get ahead of ourselves. There is admittedly a very strong counter-argument to this theory, one that could easily debunk it, and a talking point that I've been avoiding this entire time. Let's address the Mormeridae in the room. That means elephant fish, by the way. Did you like that joke, fellow fishing enthusiast? Did you like it? Did you find it fun? If Big really is so powerful, brave, heroic, resilient, and a secret genius because he can safely land a plane, why does he need to go fishing in order to catch Froggy? Why doesn't he just swim down, grab him, and go home? Does he not realise that he's putting himself at a huge disadvantage? Is he stupid? Well, no. He's actually being very intelligent, using common sense and strategic planning. Let me explain. Big knows that Froggy isn't his normal self. Trying to physically seize hold of him could cause him to become frightened and run away again. He therefore needs to gain his trust, have Froggy come to him. And what better way to do this than by utilising his field of expertise? He can attach the various lures in his possession onto a fishing rod, which he can then cast towards Froggy, who would then willingly be attracted to them, bite them, and be reeled in towards Big. And it works, every single time! But the smartasses among you are probably about to comment, well, doesn't Froggy run away again after the first two stages? Yes he does. Well done. Gold star for you fucking prick. There's a simple reason for this. Froggy swallowed a god and some glass. He completely changed because of this. It affected his ability to think rationally, and lacking that rationality meant he couldn't fully trust Big. Trust is, after all, earned. You have to really build it up with someone. It's not something that happens when you first meet them. You can't just have blind faith. It takes time. It's only in Emerald Coast, after seeing Big make multiple attempts to gain that trust through his fishing skills, as well as saving him from the Antichrist of course, that Froggy stays. The trust is then fully gained after Big breaks into a fucking airship, bypasses all of its surveillance and weapon systems, and rescues him from it and a water god. Yeah, we need to address how he pulled that first part off, don't we? There's no explanation given in the game itself whatsoever, it's never addressed or brought up again. The only way we can possibly figure this out is if there are other instances across the franchise where Big has managed to break into heavily guarded and top secret locations, which seems very unlikely. He was trying to get his friend back when he broke into the egg carrier after all, so he had a justifiable reason to trespass inside. He doesn't seem like the kind of person that would be a serial breaker and enterer, I don't know what you'd call him, but the point is, Big knows the law. He didn't bother the police when Froggy first ran off, so you wouldn't catch him dead doing something insane like, I don't know, raiding a government facility, unlike this awful thug. Look at him, destroying government machines. What possible reason could he have to... Why is Big in a prison cell?
Uh-oh, I don't like this place.
I'm sorry that I have to be the one that breaks this news to you all, but it seems that Big would do something insane, like raiding a government facility after all. In Sonic Adventure 2, it's a very obscure game, you might not have heard of it. Big can be seen in various stages, either in places where you can't miss him, like his jail cell, or bottomless pits that you have to jump down into and die, like here. And it's this spot that not only tells us why he got arrested, but can also give us insight into how he managed to sneak aboard the egg carrier. Both of these locations are on Prison Island. Eggman's stage, Iron Gate, is where the game chronologically begins as he tries to find a weapon created by his grandfather. At the same time, Big is trying to get inside the facility for some reason. Maybe Froggy's missing again, hard to say. As we can see, he's going for a more stealthy approach to try and avoid detection in contrast to Eggman's all guns blazing, carefully climbing up the walls using the steel mesh in an area of the building that isn't swarmed by robots. Quick aside, were there walls with steel mesh on board the egg carrier? Yep, definitely looks like it. Mystery solved. Big must have used that specific type of wall to climb up through the egg carrier, and avoided detection as the area he entered was way down below in an unmonitored part of the ship that no one would think to look in. He then repeated this strategy when getting inside Prison Island. It worked the first time, bound to work again. Very clever and stealthy of him, I'm sure we can all agree. Unfortunately though, considering that he's behind bars about 2 days later when this fucking anarchist is destroying government property in Prison Lane, Big must have been caught by Gunn at some point after Eggman's initial attack on the island. Perhaps they thought he was responsible for it, or at the very least associated, and that's why they locked him up. It's funny to think about for sure, but come on. For Big to have hypothetically done any of what Eggman did, he would need to have a heavily armed mech of his own and be willing to use it to attack others, which he absolutely owns and would do, especially if it means getting revenge on the little bastard who tried to break his spirit. You fucking deserve that. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, prison. So, Big breaks in and gets arrested a little while later, but not before I assume he tries to escape. I say assume because I have no fucking idea why he's in the same helicopter as Sonic at the beginning of the hero story. They can't be sending Big to jail with Sonic, because why would the government, after catching him breaking into Prison Island and arresting him, then decide to put him on a helicopter that they presumably use to transfer people they arrest, only to then lock him up on Prison Island where they found him to begin with? The American government is really fucking stupid, and I don't know what's wrong with it, but they aren't that stupid. Who am I kidding? Yes, they are. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt in this case, because evidence supporting the idea that Big is trying to escape is the fact that he can be seen panicking in City Escape as he tries to run from the gun truck. This would mean that prior to this, he got inside the helicopter undetected and jumped out shortly after Sonic decided to go surfboarding. Slight problem with this. It's a helicopter. Compared to Prison Island or the egg carrier, it's tiny. The only places he could possibly hide are in the cockpit or the cabin. But that's impossible because there's of course the pilot in the cockpit and there's soldiers in the cabin holding Sonic in custody. And yet we see Big peering out of the cabin area as if he were just sitting in there with them all. He's not even wearing any kind of disguise that could maybe, just maybe, fool the soldiers into believing he's one of them or something. Oh, but of course, that's not all. God no. Later on in the game, Big manages to trespass onto the outskirts of Eggman's secret pyramid base. And you know what Big does? He goes fishing. In the sand! And then he gets inside the base itself. Fully believable. He's already broken into 2 major facilities already. 3rd time's a charm. Whereabouts is he though? You know, just chilling inside the base's giant central core computer. We've all done that. Oh, sorry, Sonic Wikizone, what's that you say? It seems more like a nuclear reactor? You are going to die of radiation sickness! Get the fuck out of there! Oh, it's fine, guys. He's just scratching his arse now. I think he's done breaking into places he shouldn't be in for one game. Nope, just kidding, because now he's in fucking space. How the fuck is he in space? Did he sneak aboard the same rocket as Sonic and his friends? Or did he use the teleporter that Eggman used to get on board the Ark? If he did either of these, then why is he outside the colony in space? You're going to die from a lack of oxygen. How did nobody see him on the helicopter? Why did he climb inside a nuclear reactor? Why are you fishing in a floor of green energy fluid? If it wasn't already obvious, Big's depiction in Sonic Adventure 2 is a massive departure from the first game. Where he was once a kind, caring friend who went above and beyond to rescue Froggy, he has now become an anti-government agent of chaos, who defies the law by committing multiple B&Es, trolls soldiers by hiding in plain sight, and for whatever reason climbs into nuclear reactors and goes to space. All of this, and not one line of dialogue. It's like his humanity and relatability has been stripped away from him. But then in Sonic Heroes, he's back to his normal self again. He's even capable of going at much higher speeds than before, and can use his fishing rod to break down stone structures and fire projectiles. Never mind, he is not back to normal. What happened to Big? What caused this enormous shift in both power and personality? I spent entire days trying to get to the bottom of this, losing my goddamn mind trying to connect the dots. There had to be an answer, but everywhere I looked, across these 3 games. I found nothing. I even began to doubt my beliefs surrounding Big. Maybe his wild antics in Sonic Adventure 2 were just the devs having a bit of a laugh, leaving little Easter eggs for fans to enjoy. Maybe Big getting onto the egg carrier unnoticed was pure luck after all. Maybe his fishing rod having ungodly powers was just a fun little gameplay mechanic. But I decided to do a little more research regardless, and double check everything, you know, just to make absolutely sure there wasn't something huge that I'd missed. Big never gave up while trying to find Froggy, so why should I give up trying to find an answer to these questions? That's when I was told that Big actually appeared in Sonic and the Secret Rings and Sonic Chronicles The Dark Brotherhood, so I decided to just check them out for a little bit, you know, see what's there. And then I realised that not only were my theories completely plausible, but also it would explain everything. All the weird inconsistencies, the insane amount of power that comes out of fucking nowhere, the fact that he can be inside a nuclear reactor and not die. To quote Sonic WikiZone, Big is an invaluable ally, due to his ability to safely make it through harsh environments with his invulnerability. The answer was right there the entire time. It was so blindingly obvious. Big doesn't die from a lethal dose of radiation or a lack of oxygen or anything for that matter, because he can't. Nothing can kill him, so he's basically invincible. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's a god or some kind of deity. If he were, then he'd have a whole range of incredible powers at his disposal, and I'm not talking about basic ones that his friends have, like super speed, flight, gliding, or super strength. Big already has those, if Sonic Heroes is anything to go by. Look at him. I mean undeniable, irrefutable, godlike abilities that Big possesses. You already know where I'm going with this. In Sonic and the Secret Rings, you can find Big hidden in all of the levels, much like in Sonic Adventure 2. Unlike that game, however, you're rewarded with a page from his travel diary when you find him, which you can then read in the special book mode. And right out the gate with this shit, we get an insane implication. A fairy told me, so you're the blue hedgehog. So either Big has the ability to shapeshift, which, in fairness, isn't out of the question, or this fairy perceives him differently. They don't see a giant purple cat with a fishing rod like we do. They see Sonic the Hedgehog, which could mean that Big has the power of relative appearance alteration. Everybody sees something different when they look at him, like Galactus from the Fantastic Four. Alternatively, it could be similar to how there are multiple, vastly different visual interpretations of gods across our real-world history, because there is no definitive appearance for them. If there were, it would be blasphemous. These are divine beings that we're talking about here. We're not worthy to see their true forms, so perhaps we aren't worthy of seeing Big's true form. Also, it's just occurred to me, this may very well be how Big managed to get into the egg carrier in SA1, or be on board the helicopter in SA2. The defense systems of the soldiers didn't see Big as we do. They very well could have seen him as Eggman and a fellow soldier respectively. You might think I'm crazy here, but is it any more outlandish than a fairy seeing him as a blue hedgehog, or the fact that he can talk to the dead? Yeah, that's another thing he can do, by the way. In his diary entry for Skeleton Dome, he states, "I befriended the old skeleton. He said he used to be a huge fish. That's amazing." No, what's amazing is that you aren't freaking out about the fact that these remains of a long dead animal are able to talk to you. It's almost like this is normal to him, communicating with the afterlife and becoming friends with the dead. And if he were a god, then of course it would be. That's kind of the whole purpose of an afterlife, isn't it? Continuing to exist in peace and having a nice chat with a higher power who seems genuinely interested in what you have to say about the life you once lived, like how Big does here? I'm asking because I genuinely don't know. I didn't really pay that much attention in RE at school. I did pay a lot of attention to the story of Sonic Adventure 2 though, which is kind of fucking sad, actually, now that I think about it. And I realised something. Quite a few of the levels in the game take place at the same time as others. There's an amazing video by Kochu, I hope I've said that name right, I'm so sorry if I haven't, where they played through both the Hero and Dark stories in SA2, and edited the footage together to depict them happening in chronological order. Highly recommend you check it out, by the way. I'll put a link in the description if YouTube allows me. It didn't last time for some reason. So there I was, just watching this video because it sounded really cool. And then I had an epiphany. How is Big in two different places at once? How can he simultaneously be locked up in this part of Prison Island and climbing up into another? At first, I tried to rationalise this. Maybe he managed to escape his imprisonment by, I don't know, talking to the dead, and then tried to find a way off of the island itself by entering the security hall. Sure, it's plausible enough, But then according to the timeline video, Knuckles and Rouge's search for the Master Emerald shards in Wild Canyon and Dry Lagoon happen at exactly the same time. So how can Big be holding onto a cliff edge in one place and at the same time be buried alive in an underwater tunnel? The answer? Teleportation. At will, Big can just instantly teleport to another location like it's nothing. It's another explanation for how he can just get into places without initially being noticed, as well as being in two places at once. Well, actually, why didn't he just teleport to Froggy in Sonic Adventure 1 then? The same reason he didn't jump into the water and grab him, which I've already established, you smartass. Fuck off. So, Big is invulnerable to any kind of damage, he can speak with the dead, and he can teleport, which is probably how he ended up in Secret Rings to begin with. These are, undeniably, incredible powers that he possesses, gifts that he uses to do utterly insane shit. But there's one more power. Just one more. One that unequivocally proves that he is a god. The second to last entry of his diary, which reads as follows. I've come all the way to the Milky Way. I heard this is where I can find Pisces. I'd like to meet him. Pisces is the 12th and final astrological sign in the zodiac. Translated from Latin into English, it means fishes, two of them forming the symbol itself. It isn't a person or a sentient being though, so how could Big possibly hope to meet it? We'll come back to that question in a minute. I think we need a little bit more information first. Okay, so there are fishes in the sign. What do those fishes represent? Well, in one Greek myth, a group of fish roll an egg that has fallen into their river onto the shore, and upon its hatching, the goddess of love Aphrodite emerges and puts the fish into the night sky to express her gratitude, thus creating the Pisces zodiac sign. Note that this myth features a goddess being associated with the sign. Maybe there are others tied to it as well. Ah, would you look at that? According to Wikipedia, Poseidon, Vishnu, and Inanna are divine associations of Pisces. Big, who could be a god, is hoping to meet a symbol intrinsically linked to several gods. Interesting, but we still need more info. Another myth claims that Aphrodite and her son Eros actually transformed themselves into fish in an effort to escape from the monster Typhon, and it's this transformation that is depicted in the symbol. But then, there's another story, very similar to that. Well, these powerful deities, these gods, don't transform into fish during their escape. Instead, an ordinary fish, a perfectly ordinary fish, one of millions in the world, comes to their rescue, taking them to safety on the shores of the Euphrates River. And as it happens, this fish has a name. Pisces. There you have it. It's this fish that Big was hoping to meet out in space. But it's just a myth, one of many surrounding a symbol that, I'll be honest, is way beyond my understanding. How can Big know for sure that he'll meet this fish, or perhaps the gods that turned into fishes to escape a monster, or the fishes that became part of the stars? Well, it's simple. Big has the power of omni-communication. He can speak with anything and everything, be it sentient, inanimate, or an abstract concept like a zodiac sign. And how does he have this immense kind of power? Because he's a god who chooses to live as though they were an ordinary cat, a god with a frog for a pet and a best friend, who he spends every moment of every day with. A god who puts others before himself, a god who is kind and a friend to everybody, a god who uses his power to help others, a god who never gives up, a god who is willing to do whatever it takes to save his best friend, even if it means facing down another god, a god who enjoys the simple pleasures of fishing, a god who I think we could all take inspiration from, after seeing his bravery, resilience, courage, strength, kindness, and determination. And maybe, just maybe, if we are inspired enough, if we follow his example, we can be like Big. We can be ordinary people, capable of extraordinary things. Anyway, this shit was almost as long as my dissertation for university. Seriously, there's 15 pages and 6,698 words of this fucking shit. I'm probably going to do everything in my power to make sure that I never do something like this ever again, but I really hope you enjoyed it. I put a lot of time and work into this video, so I hope it shows. Fingers crossed it doesn't end up flopping spectacularly. I'm logging off and going to fucking bed, man. I'll see you all in the next one.